Now, we've been having conversations about what's happening in this ride-hailing app market. And we said, let's actually open up this conversation. And Bolt, we reached out to Bolt and they said, yeah, we can help you understand. And so we said, Bolt is going to be on the hot seat for a couple of times. And we had the country manager for ride-hailing for rides in Kenya coming here twice. We had the chairman of the Association of the Drivers coming here and telling us...
One of the associations.
Yes. Coming here and telling us these are the things that we feel that ought to be happening. Today, we have somebody else coming here to talk to us about this. And this is a guy from Bolt Okoh Global. He is the Public Policy Director of Africa and International Markets at Bolt, Kenneth Anye. Kenneth, good morning.
Good morning, Latiff. Thanks.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Really.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Really excited to be here, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about regulations. I know it's a hot topic.
Yes. Yeah. We want to talk about navigating the regulations for ride-hailing apps. One of the things that even the driver told us the time he was here is, yes, there's regulations, there's NTSA, and then everything that they've been trying to get NTSA to do, but also feeling like the app companies are also pushing their own side of regulations. How do we harmonize this? How do we make everybody feel that they're enjoying and they're benefiting from here? City will welcome you with the day's proverb. And this week he is in an East African country. Which East African country are you in, City?
It's the Republic of Kenya.
Oh.
Yes.
Kenneth, you know that country? Oh. You visited that country.
I call it home for me, you know. Yeah.
The proverb is in Kiswahili. How good is your Kiswahili?
I am still getting there, learning.
All right, then let's give you an opportunity to learn some more, shall we? Okay. Bahati ikikukataa, hata kwa mganga haitafaa. Try.
Do you get any of those words?
I don't want to kill it.
Ni bahati tena. Nothing.
Just tell me what you understand. Whatever it is.
I mean, bahati ikikukataa, hata kwa mganga haitafaa.
I don't want to kill it, City. Maybe I should get you to help me.
I actually want you to kill it.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me then tell you
he killed it.
Yes, he killed it. Okay. Yeah. Let me talk about it in English and then tell me what you think it actually means. Okay. Yeah. If luck isn't on your side, even if you went to a witch doctor, it wouldn't work.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I'm just thinking about it because I think we have something similar. I'm from West Africa, from Cameroon, and that concept about luck, right? Like if you have to look for your luck. I mean, if it comes to you, you can determine it. So whether you go to a witch doctor or whether you push it anyhow, it's not. It has to be there and happen to you, you know. Okay. So from that concept, yeah.
Now, what do you think that it means? What do you think the writers of this proverb were trying to say?
I'll take it from a point of view of you wait for it to come to you, the luck, right? That you should not push it too hard. You should not go looking for that. You know, you shouldn't push it because it will come to you when it's the right time.
Okay.
It's a good one.
Did I do that?
Yes,
right?
you did well.
Okay.
You see, the beauty of your interpretation, it can't be anybody else's. It's yours.
Yeah.
And so it can't possibly be wrong or right. It's your interpretation.
Yeah.
And the interpretations give us a broad spectrum and diversity as to how people respond to the proverbs. Yeah. And that's what we seek to find.
Okay.
Yes, not whether what someone is saying is right or whether it's wrong. No. We want the diversity.
Yeah.
So, Kenneth, in how many markets does Bolt operate in Africa?
6 markets currently. So we're in South Africa. I think I'll give in the order of how we launch, right?
Okay.
And why I'm using this is because to show the importance of Kenya to it. So in South Africa, when we launched in July 2016, then in April 2016, then in July we launched in Kenya, then in November we launched in Nigeria, then we have Ghana, we have Tanzania, and Tunisia. in Northern Africa.
All right.
So 6 markets, yeah.
So in each of these countries, these are different governments.
Yeah.
And you find different laws in these countries that govern public service vehicle. Is there anything that is similar in the 6 countries?
There are similarities, and I think
number one, it's called law.
Law, and I mean, and as you have said, different environments and different. I think I want to point out that Kenya was the first out of the 6 to start talking about regulating. I mean, back in 2018, when the market was transforming with more competition, Kenya started talking about it, and I mean the regulations came in 2022, but it was a long process of developing it, and each market has its specificity because, for example, in Nigeria, because transport is a devolved function, the laws are made at the state level, but across the markets, currently Kenya, Tanzania, and Nigeria have regulations. Ghana also has regulations. South Africa is in the process of developing regulations, although they have a law for the whole transport which recognizes ride-hailing. So it's a developing space in terms of regulations across the continent for those markets.
What's the regulation intended to achieve? What's its purpose?
I'll answer that, City, by starting to talk about when I joined Bolt. It's an anecdote, and it helps to put it in context, right? When I joined Bolt, and the first thing my director at that time told me was, at Bolt we run towards regulations, and it was a catching phrase for me. Run towards regulations, and the idea there was we need to create an environment where all the different forces can operate to give the potential to the market or the sector that we're trying to address, right? So regulations are there to create, protect the sector, make sure that the benefits are spread out. Everyone has an opportunity to grow, the market can grow, but within a confine of, to make sure that everyone is protected and every person who operates in the market is protected, be it the user, be it the in this case, the drivers and the platforms, and everybody is protected. So I think that's how we see regulations, and we are pro-regulations. I think that's a very important point.
That's interesting. So obviously the regulations came in after operations had commenced. Yeah. How have we been able to see that as a result of the practice of these regulations, then that operations have eased, become better, become more seamless? What have we seen that have been marked changes as a result of regulations? Yeah,
I think, importantly, that the point where you started about operations beginning before regulations come, I think it's across the board. Technology comes in very fast, and then the drafting of regulations, which is understandable because we have to know the product that we're trying to regulate.
Yes.
What regulations have done is that they've addressed the key challenges that you have in the sector, right? The challenges about safety, the challenges about compliance, who do we have on our roads, what documentations you need to operate, the licensing of the platforms, the issue about livelihood, which is one of the core, and in this case, the transport sector as it is across the board is a very regulated sector, right? But regulating ride-hailing was the way to go. It had to become, as ride-hailing becomes a very important integral part of the transport solution. So it has brought in a lot of benefits. I mean, sometimes we don't realize that, but if you look at in the case of Kenya, for example, most of the tensions still remain. When I say tensions, I mean we can disagree, but we disagree in a framed environment. We can talk about commission about 18%, or we can talk about documentations that you need. You can talk about who is
base rates.
Yeah, base rates and all of those. So it helps to structure the market and give more clarity about it.
Is there an appetite for these regulations to be in place? Is there an appetite, and also from governing authority, from practicing authority, and from those who, use every day? Is there an appetite to see things streamlined?
Yeah, from our experience across the board, there's appetite. I mean, from the authorities, what we see is that first there's understanding the sector, understanding technology. You see, there's always that catch up to be done. But once the clarity about what the sector is, I'm looking at it from the policymaker side point of view, once there's that clarity, there's a drive. So if you look at all the markets where we operated, they started talking about regulations and then all of a sudden there's a turbo charge of it, because the authorities now start getting it and they see the importance. They put it in the context of the whole in this case transport ecosystem, and they want to push for that. So there's appetite. There's appetite. It might be, some might consider it slow, but I think, as we know, policy is not, we don't want to rush it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bolt operates in the transport sector.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So your regulator is the NTSA, the National Transport and Safety Authority. Yeah. So NTSA has been in the market for a while, and it has been regulating the PSV sector. Yeah. Bolt is PSV, is it not?
Yes, it's. I think I will expand beyond, because when we talk about, I mean, if we're focusing only on the transport bit, because, for example, we have delivery, and we have the communication authority looking at how do you regulate that sector too, right? And we have data protection, and you have the data protection. So we have all of these multi levels, but NTSA has been, our main. Because the main bulk of our business is around moving people, right? So NTSA has been the core regulator that we've been engaging with here.
So what I wanted to understand is, if we've been having regulations on the matatu sector, the public transport sector for matatus and buses, why did we need a different set of regulations for ride-hailing taxis?
Technology.
Because of the technology aspect.
Yeah, the technology aspect is a very disruptive. Technology in itself is disruptive, right? So if you look at the marketplace, the ride-hailing marketplace, and the whole digital space, we call our market a two-sided market. We are sitting in the middle, and we have the owner of a car who is looking for the passenger to move, and we're bringing this, and so we sit in that middle, and we don't own the cars, for example, which is a very critical importance, right? And so this requires a different approach on how you will negotiate and create that, because we are sitting there, we're putting someone into someone else's car. There's a need for some form of regulating that, and that's why we moved towards regulating it in itself. And so that's why there was a need to do a ride-hailing or the regulations in that context.
And broadly, what do the regulations say?
The regulations, and in the case of the regulations, have three main parts. If you look at the 2022 Transport Network Company and Passenger regulations, rules, which it has, the first part is how do you license the operators, right? What are the conditions for licensing, which talks about, we have to be incorporated in country, we have to apply and hold a license, which is renewed every year, which we're about to renew our license. And then you have to pay the license fee and all of that, which is on the part of the platforms. Then there's another section which regulates the cars that operate on the platform, and then finally the drivers, right? And also within that, and which is what was very, very unique in the case of the Kenyan regulation, was that it went a bit further to talk about how do you regulate behaviors on the platform, like how do passenger behavior, driver behavior, platform behavior, and puts a lot of an onus on each of these players in it to be responsible for their actions. So that is it, and I know a lot of the conversations are centered around commission and around that, which is understandable, right?
And behavior.
Yeah, and behavior is a very important one, and also now in the case of in Kenya and even in other markets, safety. But this is different from all the other markets where you have a focus. I mean, you have a focus. I'll give an example in Nigeria, for example. You have a focus more on revenue generation for the sector. How do you support the transport sector? You have in Tanzania, there's a focus on pricing, and there's a focus, which is an interesting conversation, which we can talk about later. And so it's different. But Kenya the attempt was a holistic regulation. Are we there yet? We're still on the journey. Yeah.
What are the sticking points so far with the regulations?
The sticking points, in your show, and we've talked about it, there's been the question about the commission, which we can talk about, and which we don't see it. I mean, from our point of view, as I said in the beginning, we are compliant in the market. The regulations put the 18% cap, which all the platforms have to work on. I think when we look at that part of it is because we have to look at the market forces, right? How do we create the demand? How do we create, demand and supply issues? And we think, from our perspective, and when we're looking at the drafting of the regulations, the question was the impact. I think one of the things which was missing in the conversation at that time was economic and the impact of it in the sector from an economic point of view. It was in Kenyan regulations lawmaking, you need to have an impact assessment, which was not done at that stage, and which the regulator NTSA and the ministry, there's planned to do that, to do a deeper dive, but there was a lot of pressure to come out with regulations. So we understand that the speed might have been different. So that impact part of it is where we are getting back to it. And if we look forward to issues like data, how do we the sector as itself, how do we share data? How do we work with NTSA? Data sharing, how do we share which driver is on what platform? How do we get more safety into the platform? These are issues that we have to sort out as we go, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about commissions then, because that has been a conversation. So those who own the vehicles have a concern about commission, and those who are hailing the taxis have a concern about pricing. And even then the drivers have a concern about pricing. So commission versus pricing. First of all, distinguish those two.
That's a very important. I think you've really helped me out in my response, because you've touched on a very important part about that. How is the market structured, right? The market has two elements. It has a supply side, which is a car, and which has the commission is an integral part of it, and the pricing. So the driver who is operating on the platform wants to earn a living, and a decent living in that sense. But then on the other side, he needs to get a passenger into the car. So the pricing also has to match. And ride-hailing, which is a very important distinction, is that we're a complementary service. If you look at it very critically in the transport space, there are other alternatives for the user of the service. If you take the context of the Kenyan case, before ride-hailing came, there were other solutions. And the fact that we're complementary, people came, and if we don't make it attractive, that demand side might disappear. So when we're always trying to do that balancing act, and I will say from the commission part about it, the regulation had put an 18% cap, which translates to the driver taking 82% of the fare, and the platform's taking 18. And from our case, in the case of Bolt, we are very compliant about that. So that is clear. And in the part of the pricing, what we're trying to, and in the conversation with the government, is how do we look for find that sweet spot where we will not kill service. And I will use an example which is very important, the conversation which happened in Tanzania. So in Tanzania, when the ride-hailing was introduced and the regulations came in, the platforms, there was no cap on commission. Yeah, the platforms could charge any commission they wanted to charge. Yeah, at that time I think we were charging 20% in the market. Because of pressures, the commission cap was put at 15, and then there was a price floor and all of that. What happened immediately? The platforms look at the markets, because we have to invest in these markets. Some of the platforms withdrew from the market. We stayed to engage the government, because as I started off, that we run towards regulation. Yes, we decided to have a conversation with the government, and it was a 6 to 8 months engagement with our business losing, but we stayed to help the government to see the importance. And what was the interesting part about it, when the competitors and others left the market, there was a talk that the others will come in, the market will continue to thrive. But 6 months into it, the drivers I remember I went into a meeting and the drivers surrounded me, and I was a little bit like, oh, what is going to happen? And the drivers were like, we want you back because we don't have demand. That is the other side, the demand side of it. You need to incentivize. We incentivize the market. We reinvest in the market. And in those conversations, new regulations came out 6 months afterwards. And what were the regulations saying? They were saying that the commission cap was raised to 25%. Before, so you see...
Before you were operating as 20.
Before we were operating 20 and even 15. So it went from 15 to 25, and plus a service fee that could go up to 3%.
Whoa.
So you see, all of a sudden, there was an understanding that the market needs those equilibrium, and that is where the conversation has to go, right? And I think one of the things which, when we talk about it, when we look at the cost structure for the drivers, and this is something which we have to talk about, if you look at the cost structure for the drivers, and the bulk of their cost, in the case of the Kenyan market, is renting of the cars or how much they pay for those. Because if you look at the Kenyan market, it's divided into three sectors. There's a person who owns a car, there's a person who is paying a loan for the car, and there's a person who is working for a partner. If you that bulk of it, the person who is either paying for a partner or paying a loan or paying a partner, the bulk of his cost comes from that. Secondly is fuel pricing before the commission. So if we stay focused on the commission, we're not looking at the problem itself. We have to look at it on a broader base.
So the bigger costs are elsewhere.
The bigger costs are elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a cost of credit and operating this car, and then the cost of the fuel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the, I don't know if I want to call it contentious, maybe I should not use that adjective, but it's an issue for a lot of folks. Is that so you've been able to keep prices from a rider point of view considerably low. So everybody's very happy and say, okay, this is great. But the drivers say that, okay, with this commission that you speak, because it really is a commission issue. With the commission that you speak of, if you keep the price low, that means they as drivers get relatively less in terms of what they earn. And I'm sure you must have heard these complaints, quite some. How is that? Is it an issue? Can it be? Is it something that needs to be dealt with, or are we seeing that drivers they're okay? Where are we with this?
Yeah, I think as I was talking about it, and when we break down the market in itself, right, and we've talked about the different cost structure for the driver, we're very cognizant about the pressures that they have. For example, when one of the big issues of fuel pricing, which is a second cost for them in terms of size, right? And when we had the fuel pricing and the increase in fuel price, we reflected on that, and we also had increase in our pricing, right? But we have to always do this balancing act, because as I gave you the example in Tanzania, you don't want to kill the market. Because if you drive up the price in a way where people, as I said, we're a complementary service, they will move to other modes of transport. And with the 16, 17,000 or 40,000 drivers, depends on what you're looking at, they'll be out of the job. They will not have an opportunity to earn. So we're always looking at how do we balance this out. But I want to switch the conversation to look at all of those other cost structure. How do we support the drivers in those cost structure, right? For example, the car rental is a big part about it. Maybe almost 40% of the drivers in Kenya don't own the cars. They're either renting it or paying a loan, and they have this, very difficult pressure. From our side as a platform, we've done, a couple of months back, we launched the Haki, we worked with Haki to launch the co-financing of 1,500 cars. But this is it's very minute impact, but it's an impact. But we're looking at other stakeholders, discussing with the governments and other people to see how do we increase ownership of that. So that was how you solve those issues, right? And then the issue that comes up with fuel pricing and the changing of fuel pricing, as a platform, what we do is that we look at how do we cushion them by doing price increase. Is the price increase enough? The debate will always be there. But we can continue to work and engage our drivers, talk more, find ways, give them, fuel discounts and help them to get other ways to reducing that cost. But we have to have a holistic conversation about it.
So what I hear you saying is that there are conversations going in the back end that will provide cost support for drivers, but we never, from a rider point of view, or even on this public, complaint platform, is that you wouldn't see that, or you wouldn't hear about the support that's given for drivers behind the scenes.
Yeah, we do present them. We bring them out and we talk about them and try to share. But sometimes because of the pressure, the cost of living pressure and all of that might get drowned out. Because of there's a lot of talk. But then we have to look at long term to maintain the market. So we are looking at long term. We're looking at how do we continue to support the market and grow the market. We don't want to focus on an issue which changes a lot, because, for example, fuel prices have dropped all of a sudden, right? And we have the market has you get a difference of it. The impact will take some time to be felt, but you get a difference of it. But go to the core issue, which is the car ownership, the car rental, that cost. How can we unpack that? How can we solve? How can we address that? I think that's where we should, a lot of emphasis has to be paid to that.
How would you encourage riders to deal with then, because I mean, it's the whole ecosystem here, as you have to deal with drivers, you have to deal with the riders, you have to deal with government, you have to deal with all of these things at the same time.
Yeah. Rider here is the passenger.
Rider is the passenger.
Okay.
Right? The person who's hailing and getting in. When they are dealt with a conversation with the driver, who then says, how much is it asking you to pay? Right?
Yeah.
You say, well, according to the estimate, it is 1,000 shillings, whatever. And they say, no, I cannot. Because these are real conversations, isn't it, Kenneth?
Yeah.
They say, no, I cannot go for that price. I say, well, look, I hailed the thing, and this is how much it's telling me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're going to pay that plus 500 shillings or whatever. If not, I'm not going to take you. What would you say the rider should do?
The most important element of this, and when this, what we call that offline trips, where the driver will try to, and the key for the rider there is, what service are we providing as a platform in there? There's a combination of reliables, but there's a combination of safety.
Yeah.
Because the moment you go out of that environment, you cannot be guaranteed that safety. You cannot be guaranteed all the aspects that ride hailing brings, right? The reliability, the safety aspects, the efficiency aspect of that. You lose out of that. So what we tell our passengers, or rider base, is this is the reason why you came to the platform, was to get all of this, and you deserve that. So we will advise them against that approach, because we cannot, you lose out on those.
So what must I do practically, right? What must I do? Do I say, okay, I'm going to cancel the trip and I'm going to request another one? Because this it does happen, What should people do?
Yeah, what we advise the passengers to do is, through the app they can inform. Inform the platform, inform Bolt, and we get, this trip, I booked this trip, and it was, the driver asked me to cancel because, or wants me to pay offline, and inform us, and then we have to engage the driver to, understand where the driver's pain point is and how do we address that. But we'll tell the passenger to, inform and try again to get another trip. And we have done a lot of information on this since it started, when we had that issue, and we've seen a change, because we've been able to educate both the drivers and the passengers about the negative impact of the offline, what we call offline trips, right? So,
when Linda, sorry,
please go ahead, Eric.
When Linda was here, Kenneth, we asked her what are the elements that go into pricing, and she told us the 3 elements. There's a base price, then you look at distance, and you look at the time. So those 3 then combine to the fare that I get. When the drivers came, we told them, that's it. And they're like, yeah, we understand. But we don't even know how they're calculating that. And they'd like to know how you're calculating it. Is it possible for drivers to participate in the decision-making of the price per ride?
Yeah, I think and that's a very important point, because there's been a lot of conversation about, we want to be in the seat on the table about how you do this, and what we always say is that, because of the dynamic nature of the market, and I'll use other examples where we've been trying. There's been an attempt to set the price, to say this is where how you set the price, and from our point of view, for where we are standing, our vantage position is that we have so many data points that we're bringing in. Our most important issue that we're looking about is the efficiency of the market. So we will never want our drivers to be dissatisfied, because they will vote, and they'll vote with their feet and leave and go to other platforms.
Yeah. Have they been leaving?
Not the case, because we have a lot of them who are staying, and we have a lot of them who are earning opportunities. If that was the case, we might not be in the market.
Many more that are joining.
Yeah, more are joining, and then we're looking at ways that we can support them. We're looking at ways where we can address their challenges.
This discussion is actually not going to end. Not that it's not going to end soon, it won't end. But have you, as Bolt, figured out what it is that your drivers expect? Because one hears pricing, we want to sit at the table. And as you're talking, I was thinking, when I go to buy unga for ugali, Do I want to sit at the same table with the people who produce unga to tell them, guys, this unga, can we agree? Or do I allow the market forces to more or less determine the price? So expectations, because when someone says such things, there's something they expect. So what is it? We had the chairman of one of the associations that handle the affairs of these ride-hailing apps, and he focused a lot on buying the car, not being able to pay. And we asked, was Bolt involved in the process of you buying the car? Did they in any way influence your buying the car or in your going into the business? And the answer was no. You see, there are conversations which when people have, it is clear there's something they have at the back of their mind, and you need to understand it. Why is this person insisting on this, and why are they so keen on this happening? Because in my mind, it's clear. If I don't like the app, then I move. I go away. I don't see why there is such a need for such a big hoo-ha. One. Two, the regulation that we speak of, okay, the government may understand the regulations, Bolt may understand the regulations, but do the drivers understand these regulations? Not understand. Do they understand them the way you do? Because clearly, when one reads and one comes across the number of complaints that one hears about very, very, very often, it would sound as though this is something that is untenable and they must move away from it. Now, I speak as somebody who uses ride-hailing apps daily, literally daily. And I talk to the drivers. And that's the spirit, Eric. Yes, power to the people.
Yes.
In equal measure, there are those who do not complain, and there are those who complain in equal measure. In equal measure, there are those who say they can't make a living working in these conditions, and there are some who actually say they don't know what on earth the complaint is about, because them they're doing quite fine. So again, understanding the expectations becomes now, how will you go about understanding the expectations? Not understanding what they're telling you they want. What is fueling and what is pushing this thing that they're telling you they want?
And thanks, CT. This is very. I mean, it's timely, this conversation about expectations, because when you talk to a driver, at the end of the day, that this is as you know, as the American saying that it's the economy is stupid. It's all about money. It's all about the earnings. The driver wants to have a decent earning, and why the decent earnings? They want to be able to pay for their loan if they're renting the car, or they want to at least look at how they can, make a decent living for their family and all of that. So the earning question always comes, and it gets, it talks about commission, we talk about price, we talk about everything but earnings. And that's why when I started talking about it, I said, let's break down the cost. How can we go into each of these cost segments and support them?
Yeah.
Because if we don't miss that, we will focus our conversation on the third factor, which is commission. And I always say, every time I use and I have a conversation with drivers, I'm like, there's a conversation about, no, it used to be 50, it should be 15, not 13. I was at 3% change in commission. If you look at your cost structure, is that going to, and then after a little of debate, it's like, no, we need more. That's the conversation we should be having. How do we, on all the stakeholders in the market, how do we look at all of these different cost factors? Yeah. And on the issue about understanding the regulations, you're right about it. The regulation, we need to do more about with the drivers, for example. Engaging from our side, we have been having, focus groups, talking to the drivers about the regulations. The regulations, if you talk to policymakers, intentions of improving it. There's still conversations. As I said in the beginning, one of the things which was missing in the regulation was the regulatory impact assessment. The whole economics of it was never done to the deal where you could explain it to the driver and break it down and say, these are the different cost structures, these are the implications, where are the pain points and how do we solve it? Yeah.
Basically, what we're discussing here is input versus output. We have a half-inch input pipe, a quarter-inch input pipe and half-inch output pipe. The output pipe is what we should be addressing. Yeah. Why is it draining faster than we are putting in? So what are these factors? If you're talking about if it's a cost of fuel, if it's a cost of actually this car on a daily basis and all, if you can support them in that. One of the things that you talked about is that the regulations touch on, so the commission and pricing, there is the impact which hasn't been done, then there's the safety and behavior, and regulations are on this matter of safety and behavior. From the passenger side, the complaints that you'll hear about are matters of safety and behavior of the drivers. What do the regulations say?
The regulations on the aspect of safety and behavior, right? They're very granular in the case of the Kenyan regulation, because it talked about, verbal abuse. You should not verbally abuse. You should not, you should be careful about. You should treat your car the quality of your car needs to be, up to standard. You should be polite to the passengers, and vice versa to the passengers also, and even puts in remedy situations, right? That we need to, report to the NTSA. The platforms have to report to when they have safety issues and all of that. This is a very, very, far-reaching and very advanced thought process about how you impact behavior. I don't want to say regulate behavior, because it's people. You should allow people to, make that we're adults, right? But how you can impact it. I think what we need to do more about it is how do we operationalize those aspects, right? How do we move forward with those? I'll give you an example. You said if there's a safety incident, we have to report to the regulator. It's a marketplace with 6-7 platforms. Is there a mechanism to make this process seamless so we can share information and we can be able to collectively improve the quality? Because now it's being done on an individual basis. This platform does it this way, that platform does it that way. But how do we improve that? How do we create more? And that is where our appeal when we discuss with policymakers is how do we strengthen those regulations which were good in that aspect when they were looking at it. So I do understand, and if you look at it from a point of view of Bolt, there's the issue about safety, and we've really invested. Last week, not this week, we launched our safety campaign, which is a 13 billion shillings investment on trying to see on how we will improve our safety, more features. In Kenya, you see we have more features, more looking at compliance and all of that, right? So safety is at the top of our considerations when we look at how we improve the marketplace.
I want to take you back to something you mentioned earlier on. You said your focus group discussions, which means you have a data gathering mechanism for understanding what it is that the riders, the people who you partner with, the people who have vehicles, what they think and what they want. Now, the efforts that you have made thus far, what have they informed you about what it is that the drivers expect, want, vis-a-vis what it is that the company is doing?
The big conversation are two. The earnings question, which we have touched on. How can you help us improve our earnings, right? We talk about pricing, we talk about commission, but let's have a holistic conversation about all of this. Because if we don't have a holistic conversation about all of it, it will become single issue. It's easy to talk about pricing, because it can get a lot of with price, with cost of living issues and all of that. It gets a lot of attention, but they are asking us to engage them more in explaining how we can support them in that sense. So that's one. The focus groups brings up those points, and I'll just add about that, which is very important. Is that if we look at the journey so far, we have moved from minimum in the initial stages. There was minimum engagement with the drivers. We used to have it, but we have grown as we have gone. We've created better relationship with them. We have engaged with them constantly. We have a drivers center where we receive them and we converse more. Can we do more? Definitely we can do more. And that's what we're looking at.
The pricing and everything around it, whether we're talking about pricing, whether we are talking about commissions, there are factors that contribute to both these conversations that are beyond your reach. For instance, taxes. If you buy a car which is expensive, or you want to lease, or you are buying a car and paying in installments, and the cost of the car was already high, in fact, getting into this business is already damaged, because the very process of doing business is so hampered that it is unlikely that you who has the car will actually make money. Now, government sometimes has preferential treatment for certain sectors. If the government through organized unions, so for these fellows who are in this line of business, were given some reprieve when it comes to taxes. The government will make up for it in terms of, if these people earn more, then there's more for the government to tax. So the government doesn't actually lose. They actually open up that particular market more. But the moment the taxes are high, the very process of acquiring cars becomes restrictive. Now, how do you help these individuals to actually have a conversation about having a powerful body that can actually communicate effectively? Because right now they don't. And how do you help them understand that this is something that could help with the business that they're in?
Yeah, and you've touched on that part about how they get their assets and the cost of it. Whether it's the interest that they have to pay for these assets and all of that. And it's a continuous conversation when we're having with the policymakers and the government in this case, where we're pointing to the data that we have. That car ownership is a very expensive aspect. It's one of the key points. How can we help? How can we be on the table to support that? As I gave the example of the 1,500 cars, which we are supporting co-finance, and the reaction was like 1,500. What is that? You should do more. And we are like, the issue is massive that we have.
There's very many cars.
Yeah, no, but it is. But we when we get that feedback from the drivers, we're like, we understand you because the problem is bigger, but we need everybody on board. Yes, it has to be a collective approach. And in the conversation with government, and you've talked about maybe if we give opportunity, we'll broaden the tax base and we'll be able to help more people will enter the space, people earn a living and they can, support through their taxation. This is economics 101, right? If you brought in the businesses, and the question that we always ask ourselves is, we're telling the policymakers and the authorities is, how can we support? We have all of this data. We have all of this information. Let's work together. And they are listening, right? We're having engagements with them. But one thing about it is that it's not it's not one solution quickly. It has iteration. Yeah, it's not a sweet. Yeah, it's not a sweet spot. It's a very delicate conversation. And we're having that conversation and looking at how we can improve that.
Kenneth, good to have you today.
Thanks so much.
Very, very enlightening and a good conversation. Kenneth Anye is the Public Policy Director for Africa and International Markets at Bolt. He's been our guest today. Bolt on the hot seat, understanding regulations for ride-hailing apps in the country.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.